The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood and I am here on the 12th of September and it's just turned 10 o'clock. I hope you have had a wonderful morning so far. A little bit cooler today, which is probably quite welcomed. I know we've suddenly gone through a second summer almost here in the UK. And I actually firmly lay the blame for that to my guest who's on the show with me today, who is the wonderful author Awais Khan. I think he's brought the Pakistani weather with him. Today on the show, we are talking about his latest book, which is called Someone Like Her. Now, you might remember I did have Awais on a few years ago. So this is before COVID. It was his debut book, if I'm correct, which was In the Company of Strangers. Fantastic book. So I was really, really excited. As soon as I knew that Awais was in the UK and he was doing his book launch here, I thought I have to grab my hands on a copy of Someone Like Her so we can discuss it with the author himself. So as always, I'm going to delve in straight into the blurb of the book itself, so give you a bit of context. And yeah, we will then go over to Awais and talk a little bit about the themes. So the blurb is Multan, Pakistan, a conservative city where an unmarried woman over the age of 25 is considered a curse by her family. Aisha is 27. Independent and happily single, she has evaded an arranged marriage because of her family's reduced circumstances. When she catches the eye of powerful, wealthy Raza, it seems like the answer to her parents' prayers. But Aisha is in love with someone else, and when she refuses to give up on him, Raza resorts to unthinkable revenge. Aisha travels to London to rebuild her life, and there she meets Gamil, an emotionally damaged man who has demons of his own. They embark on a friendship that could mean salvation for both of them, but danger stalks Aisha in London too. With her life thrown into turmoil, she is forced to make a decision that could change her and everyone she loves forever. So that's a really intriguing blurb, and I have to say I really did enjoy reading the book Someone Like Her. So we're going to go straight over to Awais, who is very kindly joined us in the studio, which is always very exciting, and you should be able to join us today on Facebook Live. If you have any thoughts or comments, you can call in on 01582 481 822, or you can also choose WhatsApp, so that's 07779 481 822. So Assalamu alaikum, Awais, how are you this morning?
It's so nice to be back in Luton, and thank you so much for having me. It's always, being in Luton is like, kind of like being back in Pakistan. You see so many Pakistani people here, so it's nice to be here.
That's good. It's a home away from home. That's how we like to describe it. So if we go straight to, I guess what my first question was, that in the Company of Strangers, and actually your second book as well, which was No Honour, both those tackle quite, really tough subjects, I guess, which are definitely necessary. So I guess the question really was, what was the motivation about this particular book, your newest book, Someone Like Her?
Yes, I think I do have a reputation for writing about social and cultural issues in Pakistan. And yes, this book is no different. I think there's so many issues and so many problems in Pakistan, and it's just, I think it's very important for us to talk about them. This particular issue, which is about asset attacks and domestic violence in general, I think this is something that it's not just strictly restricted to Pakistan, but it's a problem the world over. So I thought that it was probably very important to talk about this, because most of it is brushed under the rug anyway in Pakistan, and a lot of victims don't get justice because either they're too scared to come forward, or they're just it's parental pressure and they just don't follow up. So that's the thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, just to maybe, that might be quite a good point for listeners. So, I mean, today's themes will be probably quite difficult. So just in terms of any kind of trigger warning, there will be conversations obviously about a little bit about domestic abuse and asset attacks. And if there is anything that, you need support, please do obviously feel free to contact the studio and we can signpost you if you do need that. So then coming on to obviously those kind of themes, Awais, so obviously with domestic abuse, but you also in this book kind of, because naturally that has an impact on mental health as well. So I was really interested to know, did you need to do any particular type of research, in to lead up, before, writing the book itself?
I think these kind of issues always require research because it's something that has to be dealt with very sensitively, and it's a problem, and it's something that a lot of people are going through in the world. So the least an author can do is to properly research it. But yes, I did do research. I would say fortunately my mother is from Multan, so I've been visiting that city for since childhood. So I know a lot about it anyway, but I did it's always important to visit that place specifically for research. So I did that. It took 3 years of research for that, because that was an even more challenging subject for me, because it was rural Pakistan. So yes, I did a lot of research to answer your question.
Yeah, and actually it's so interesting you say that, because as I was reading the book I was thinking you must have a connection with Multan, because obviously it's such a core part of the story, and I've never been, so it was just oh okay. So and then what is it, do you think then, obviously you've mentioned the fact that there are these issues in Pakistan, and they tend to get kind of brushed under the carpet, etc. But what are you kind of hoping then for this book to kind of do in terms of exploring those themes? What is your maybe hope from that?
Well, I think first of all, bringing these issues to the forefront is necessary. I think that's the most important thing, because like I said, that a lot of people are not talking about it. A lot of people it's like I said, it's just brushed under the rug, because people want to save face. People want their daughters to not lose the prospect of marriage, later on. So it's such a confusing and such a claustrophobic society sometimes in Pakistan, that these things are not talked about at all. So I think my point in writing this was to not malign Pakistan in any way, but to put these issues on the forefront and hope that some positive steps can be taken to tackle them. Maybe some legislation, maybe some governmental intervention. I do things like that, especially I think we'll be talking about it later as well, but yeah, anything some action that can actually take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that in some way is a role of a writer or any kind of artist. It's almost like holding up a mirror, isn't it? And just getting you to reflect, and hopefully obviously the readers themselves. So obviously you've just had a book launch. How was the book launch, and how is it kind of been received at the moment, from what you can tell?
Well, yes, we had a book launch on the 6th of September at Waterstones, Islington in London, and it was literally the book launch of my dreams, because there were almost 100 people there, and even everyone was like, the people who to turn up, and everyone they'd be like, we've not seen this kind of turnout for even best-selling authors, and for a Pakistani author to draw this kind of crowd is it's amazing. And someone said that they'd been in the book launch circuit for over 15 years, and they'd never seen so many Pakistanis at a book launch. So I'm counting that as a triumph.
That is definitely a win. That is definitely a win. It's so nice, and I think that's what's really important, isn't it? Because when we talk about the publishing industry and the lack of representation, and obviously underrepresented writers, and there's so many different terms, I guess, but that's really what it creates, because once we start seeing writers and stories that represent us, then it's that natural feeling of you belong in a particular space, right? And so that's really refreshing to hear. And what about how's the journey been in terms of then writing the book and getting it to publishing? I just wondering for the listeners, and that doesn't have to be just about this book. Obviously, this is your third now. How has all of that been for you in terms of your writing journey, and now obviously being, an author, with amazing book launches?
Well, it has been quite a journey. So, I mean, people see me now with the launch and everything and all that. And people think it's probably been very easy, but let me tell you, I mean, if I had known it would be so hard, I probably wouldn't have done it. It's such a hard thing. It's to get that exposure. And as you said, for a Pakistani especially, like the lack of representation, it's I know that life is hard for every writer out there, but for Pakistan, multiplied by 100, it's that hard. So, I mean, yeah, I think I'd have to thank my agent here, that Annette Crossland, for taking a chance on a Pakistani author. Not many agents do in this part of the world, but yeah, I'm grateful to her, and also it's just to the readers as well who've embraced me, especially here in the UK, from my first book itself, and the support has only grown. It hasn't shrunk. So that's why you saw that kind of launch the other day, because it was just that the community is so supportive. The authors, the readers, bloggers, publishers, agents, everyone has been very supportive. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And, you know, it has been exciting following kind of that journey, and especially since, you know, you were last on the show with the first book. So coming back to someone like her, now, in the book itself, there's a couple of actually probably a few times, the term, or like, you know, the sentence of "log kya kenge" is in there, right? And obviously I'm sure across the diaspora and within, you know, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and lots of probably countries, have that kind of concept, I guess. So what is your own opinion, I guess, of that kind of attitude or kind of thinking? What impact has that had on kind of familial relationships and like wider society?
It has a huge and very widespread impact even today. And even for someone like me, you would think that, you know, who's very unaffected by these things or probably very enlightened. I suffer from that as well. I have to go through because the societal gaze in Pakistan is a real thing. The log kya kahenge concept, it totally exists, and most families in Pakistan work alongside that, and most people fear to do something that is not in the norm, because and they don't do it because they fear that log kya kahenge. So it's a very, very real concept in Pakistan, and not just in Pakistan, but as in South Asia, and also I think in the UK as well, among the diaspora here, the fear still exists. I mean, maybe it's a little diluted, but it still exists, that what will people say? So this whole sentence is actually holding so many people back, both in South Asia and across the world. So yeah, I wish that I'm alive for the day when this sentence doesn't have that impact that it does today.
Yeah, because it's such a loaded thing. Isn't it? And it can crop up in any situation. It's not even, I mean, obviously in this particular book, someone like her, it's the fact that the main protagonist, she is obviously unmarried and she's getting older. So, you know, Aisha, and then obviously everything else that kind of transpires in terms of Raza and her being kind of pursued, and, you know, then obviously the tragedy then that occurs. But yeah, I guess obviously in any context, but yeah, I think you've kind of captured that really well in terms of a cultural cultural baggage almost, and the fact that, you know, it still exists even now, and like you said, even still in the diaspora as well. So then going on to maybe the fact that obviously we have Aisha, who is obviously the victim of an acid attack in the book itself. But I was also really intrigued by the fact that you obviously have is it Kamil or Kamil? I'm not, you know, I was thinking I should know how to pronounce this name, but I want to ask you.
Yes, it's Kamil, but I'm glad that you know both pronunciations. So okay. It's fine. Yeah, it's actually Kamil. Yeah.
Okay, Kamil, yes. So, and the fact that obviously he himself is obviously in the book is based in the UK. He's had kind of a string of maybe unsuccessful relationships. So yeah, the fact that he's going through his own silent struggles because of some, you know, unsuccessful relationships he's had. But the fact that he is also impacted by how he is being seen, or his mother worries how their family is being kind of, you know, perceived. The fact that he's also unmarried and she's really desperate to have children. So yeah, what made you want to kind of explore the male perspective of struggles as well as, you know, female?
I think in our society, men are always supposed to be, you know, stoic and never show emotions and to always be strong. But the fact is that men are also weak. Men can have emotions and men can suffer as well. So So I think I wanted to look into some of that as well, explore some of that. And coming back to what you said about Log Kya Kahenge, I think it's across the board, the judgment about that. So I wanted to show how it is for men as well, because they suffered through that a lot. The judgment, and also the fact that, the weight of expectations, the burden of expectations and all of that. So I wanted to show a side of that, and how the toll it takes to just keeping everything within you and not letting anything out. So I think it's very important to explore that as well, the expectation from society that men should never show the slightest weakness. So yeah.
And do you hope that maybe, for any readers, and this is both kind of men and women, is there a bit of an encouragement there, obviously naturally, that for men to be able to share their emotions? And obviously there's one part of it where, that it's important that they do. But I guess reading it was also about maybe as women in our men's lives, and maybe creating that space where if they want to do that, it shouldn't be seen, as a sign of weakness. So what was really interesting was in someone like her, he meets obviously a woman, and it's just gone out of my head what her name is, but she's the one who kind of suggests therapy, for him to join a group therapy, which I thought was so. It was just a wonderful moment, I think, for someone to be able to reach out and at least give the idea to him.
That was Safia.
Oh, yes, that's right.
But yeah, I just and you'll notice that I tried to show how Safia, born and brought up in London and everything, she was enlightened enough to suggest that. But with Aisha, even though she was very enlightened, very independent, but when she heard that he was going through therapy and everything, and she's like, now I've seen everything.
Yes.
A Pakistani man in therapy. So you see, these kind of things, these judgments, they still exist, no matter how enlightened or our society becomes. So, yeah.
Yes, that's true. Actually, I'd forgotten that. You're right, because the reaction, it really, it's obviously a jolt to him, isn't it? Because he's being judged in that moment.
I know.
Yeah, and actually, that's really another point, because I think sometimes, we can be guilty of the fact that when we hear about issues like maybe domestic abuse or acid attacks, or these real kind of tragic things that are happening in people's lives, we might assume it's happening in certain communities where maybe they're not educated, or I don't know. There could be all these perceptions, but obviously you've taken the character of Raza, who's obviously this rich, wealthy, from an elite family, who's an absolutely awful. Obviously I'm going to watch my language about what I say about him. But so what? And again, it reminds me of the fact that even in the first book that you wrote, In the Company of Strangers, you were kind of looking at that kind of upper class society in Pakistan, and actually the flaws even that exist. So what was it about that, and having to pick Raza as a character?
I think Raza is basically he's a manifestation of how entitled men can be in Pakistan, especially when they're rich. So it's kind of like nothing is denied to them, and I think that to some extent parents and their family, they enable that behavior. As you might have seen, her mother was a big enabler in that. It's like when they know that they have all the money in the world, then everything becomes relative. So it's not about whether something is right or wrong. It's about how you can get it if you want it. So that sense of entitlement actually leads people down very dark paths, and to some extent that was my inspiration. I mean, that's why I created Raza's character, because he just had no heart at all, and to him, everything he did was right, because for him, that's all he had been ever taught, that if you want something, go get it, and nothing is ever denied to you. So that's what he thought with people as well, that if I like someone, then I must get them by any means possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's exactly it, isn't it? Because there's the idea that the money can buy you, you can get whatever you want, and also then get away with whatever, and that's in essence, up until most of the story, that is what is happening. He just keeps getting away with really, really awful kind of, violence and attitudes, and, towards Aisha, but just generally, as a whole. And obviously the fact that he's able to buy off, the police, or, when we talk about corruption, and of course that happens in all countries, but I think even for me, sometimes when I think about, Pakistan and the sense of justice there, it's kind of really sad, isn't it? I think anyway. So then, in terms of the story itself and the fact that we have, and obviously we're talking in the context of Pakistan, that these issues do occur. You talked a little bit about, potentially the government coming up with some sort of legislation or, so I wonder, what steps really do need to be taken? Like, we have yourself as writers who are holding up the mirror, so to speak, to these issues. But I guess it could be quite an overwhelming, feeling of wanting to change Pakistan for the good. But what are the little steps? What are the little steps?
I think for starters, the first step that the government needs to take in Pakistan is to manage and scrutinize the trade of these products, you see, acid and stuff. How do people make this? So go back to the roots. Where is this coming from? So at least police what's going on, the trade of these products, so that people can't make these products at home or whatever. And I think the second step would be to actually get the parliament involved, because there is legislation against honor killings now in Pakistan. So I think the same should be done for this as well. I'm sure there is something already, but that's the problem with Pakistan, that they do have legislation, but it's not enacted. The law isn't followed, and especially in rural areas or smaller cities, the rule of law is much weaker anyway. And the feudal system comes in, and the influence comes in, and that's how people get away with it. They'll buy the victims off, they'll buy the police off. And in smaller areas of Pakistan, maybe there's just one police station servicing a huge area, and that it's just one inspector, you see, and he can be bought off very easily. So that's the thing. I think they need to increase the salaries of these policemen, so that they'll be less liable to take bribes and stuff, and get sold off like this. So I think these are some small steps they can take, and yes, raise our voices. That's what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important that you've kind of talked about the root problems, because sometimes that's what happens. We ended up talking about the more superficial, bigger, but you're right. And because, I know, again, we're talking about Pakistan, but even the UK, we have had actually issues of acid attacks between kind of, gang members, and, because obviously it's almost more, I don't know what word to use, but, you've got guns and knives, but there's something about being able to get hold of a chemical and then using that as a weapon, which obviously is so, kind of obviously as dangerous as anything else. And I guess, the fact that, if we're able to provide better in terms of employment, then naturally, maybe that ripple effect will it'll have that positive ripple effect. So then I guess I'm thinking that in terms of Pakistan and the fact that, people are reluctant, I guess, to acknowledge some of the problems there. Do you sometimes worry that by focusing on obviously issues of, for example, in this is kind of domestic abuse and violence or honor killings, etc., that there's a risk that you're perpetuating negative stereotypes that people might have? Like, is there a worry there? Or
That's a very good question, and this is something that I get asked every time in Pakistan. The thing is that writers are somehow expected to always portray a positive image of Pakistan. I don't know what this infatuation is with presenting a positive image. Yes, there are some good things about a lot of good things about Pakistan, but we also have to see how the majority of the population is living. So these kind of things come from the elite class, who are already very entitled, who are very privileged, who are living in a bubble mostly. So the reality for 95 or 96% of Pakistanis is radically different from the reality that these people are living. So for them to say that, don't talk about this stuff because what will people say or what will the West say? I mean, just look at the other 95%. Just look beyond your houses, beyond your big cities, and see what's going on in Pakistan, and then tell me that we shouldn't talk about it. So I don't really believe in this thing at all, that, Pakistan should always be presented in a positive light. When things are okay in Pakistan, when things are right in Pakistan, there will be no need to portray anything in positive light, because it's for everyone to see. The Pakistan, everyone will be praising Pakistan. But for now, we must talk about it so that we can alleviate a little bit of what those people are going through every day.
I think you're right. And again, it's what we were talking about, representation, because sometimes I guess you do have that burden of representation that, I must have to have something positive. So, that's completely understandable. So we're heading over to a break. We are talking today to Awais Khan and about his latest book, Someone Like Her. So we've talked a little bit about obviously some of the issues within Pakistan society. We've talked a little bit about Log Kya Kenge, what will people say, and the impact that is having on relationships and wider society as well. In the second half of the show, we'll talk a little bit more about obviously Someone Like Her, some of the other themes in the book. We'll delve a little bit deeper into the characters themselves as well. I hope really wonderful that Awais is joining us today in the studio. And you can join us back in a few moments. We'll be talking about things like money and marriage as well, because obviously those are some of the themes within the book. Grab yourselves maybe a cup of chai and some biscuits or something, and we will be back in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Book Club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and in the studio today we are joined by Awais Khan, and we are talking about his latest book, Someone Like Her. So this is about Aisha, who lives in Multan, Pakistan, and she is unmarried, and she's being labelled as kind of almost past her sell-by date, which is basically how women, even after the age of 20-something tend to get labelled. She is then catches the eye of wealthy Raza, who is basically gets rejected by her because she's already in love with somebody else. He then takes steps to exact his revenge, which is quite terrible and violent. And we are talking a lot today on today's show about domestic abuse and also acid attacks. So please do bear that in mind as you're listening to the show today. So in the first half of the show, we were talking a little bit about some of, I guess, the social cultural issues that we get in Pakistan, and sometimes the impact that can have even, for the diaspora that is living outside Pakistan, and particularly, in the West, or, like myself, we're, living in the UK, and how maybe our perceptions are of Pakistan and issues, and how those can kind of still filter into everyday life, even within our homes here as well. Wes, coming back straight to you, we were talking just before the first break, the fact that the burden of representation on yourself as a writer, that because you do tackle very difficult subjects, it does mean that you sometimes get questioned about why you're not portraying Pakistan, in a positive light. So maybe just following on, from that conversation, it made me think of something recently that I came across. So there was a drama in Pakistan that I think it was already released, or it was maybe a trailer had come out. I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to mention, the drama itself, but it all went viral about the fact that, it was about a particular incident that had happened in Pakistan involving kind of sexual violence against a woman, and how that had triggered, obviously, the survivor, and there was a lot of conversation about the drama writers or directors, etc., being quite insensitive. What are your kind of thoughts when something like that happens in terms of wanting to ban a drama or ban this film, and because it's not fitting a particular narrative, I guess?
Well, it depends on how you're treating that topic. If you're dealing with that topic sensitively and appropriately, I don't see any reason why it should be banned. But if you're just getting, if you're tackling that topic just for the sake of that, just to get views, then I think it's probably not a very good thing. So I'm not usually in favor of things being banned at all, because I feel that it's very important to give people creative liberty and to help them, tackle subjects the way they want to. But yes, television in Pakistan can be a bit, they can exaggerate things, they can sort of go down that kind of rabbit hole. So I'm not exactly familiar with that drama myself, but yeah, I do feel that it's our duty to at least do the research and to treat these kind of topics sensitively.
Because I think you're right that there is, and again, it's not just Pakistan, this happens across the board, but this kind of sensationalism, isn't it? Because you want to create content or because you want to have, like you said, some sort of audience. And I think that's really interesting. And I guess even when it comes to books and, your book, Someone Like Her, because, for example, we were talking about Raza's character and the fact that, that there's a portrayal of a particular Pakistani man who's very entitled because he has money and, things like that. Do you think then but we still require a bit of nuance, and that's not at all to justify anyone's behaviour. But is there something there? Like, how can we get away from that kind of sensationalism? Like, what do artists, in particular, maybe need to do to make sure there's a balanced approach? Like you said, to make sure it is a bit more sensitive and not just
I think it's very important not to perpetuate stereotypes as such, because even though Raza is a very stereotypical character and he's quintessentially evil, but as opposed to him, Kamil is a very sensitive character. He's the kind of like the antithesis of Raza. So I think that's very important. Similarly, when I wrote No Honor, it's very stereotypical to assume that fathers will always be against their daughters when it comes to honor, and they'll uphold the family honor as opposed to their daughter's happiness. But in No Honor, the father actually stands with his daughter. So I think that's when we explore things where we can actually stop using these stereotypes. Where we stop using these stereotypes, I think that's where that's the kind of content we should create, I think.
Yeah, and I think, I absolutely agree. I think the balance that you created in Someone Like Her is just done really well. Like you said, because you've got Kamil and then you've got Raza, you've got, the mothers and the fathers and how they are. And and there was such a, I don't know, I had a very visceral kind of reaction to some of the conversations that the parents were having, but it's because it's things you've heard of or that you've heard yourself. But the fact that Aisha's father does want to support her, but then it's all of that pressure that he's feeling as well, and again it comes to money, and obviously one of my next questions was going to be the fact that we have kind of, there's money and then there's marriage, which are like two really big things that kind of occur and within the book, but even in life itself, right? Because honestly, as a Pakistani woman myself, that's especially, I guess, living in the UK, that there is the idea that you want to, as a woman, still be kind of educated and successful, and that's, be financially independent. But then at the same time, it's like, when are you going to get married? Or when are you going to have children? So we go through all these things. Why do you think that these two things are so kind of closely connected, like money and marriage, I guess? I know it's a bit generalized, and are things changing, do you think?
I think that it's very important to understand that Pakistan is not a first world country. So love, there is no such thing as, there is love, obviously. But in Pakistan, that concept does not exist, at least in the minds of parents, most parents. They're like, the priority is it will always be money, because things are so precarious in Pakistan anyway, that everyone is always is more concerned about securing their livelihood and to securing their future, and money is the best way to do that. So marriage has to be seen as something that will also bring in money, or that will actually stabilize that person. So that's what money is. Not marriage. Marriage is kind of an arrangement in Pakistan. It's not actually a union of two people. It's actually a union of two families, in Pakistan. So that's what I think of. But in the UK, it's different, because even though you said you still face all of these things, but I feel that the experience is diluted a little, because there's so much independence here, and the ability for people to stand on their own 2 feet, which is something that is not afforded, which is a luxury that's not afforded to everyone in Pakistan. So then that's why money becomes such an important thing in all these discussions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very interesting because Aisha's character, I mean, she's a working woman, so she's already earning. It's the fact that she comes from a family that back in the days would have been considered kind of, I guess, upper class and elite, but obviously they don't live that life any longer. So there's the kind of almost not nostalgia isn't the right thing, but this kind of longing to be able to gain that status again. And of course, that is what then leads to the fact that they're really keen for Aisha to marry this obnoxious, horrible Raza. So yeah, no, definitely. I think that's really interesting, and what you're saying about marriage, because it reminds me of I think it's the movie, Little Women, which obviously is based on the book by Jane Austen. But the fact that the character says, that marriage is like an economic, preposition or something. I can't quite remember what now the quote was, and it's true. I think there's so much connection between, two things in terms of economically what marriage has always done. And again, that's not in Pakistani culture. We only have to go back to very recently, even, in UK history or Victorian times or whatever it might be. And I guess, there's an impact of a little bit, there always is, of colonialism. The fact that why is, like you said, Pakistan not, so to speak, a first world country, it's because of all of the colonial history of British Empire and the state in which it was left, and it's almost still 70 or so years, still, recovering. What are your hopes for, I know you've mentioned some already in terms of, Pakistan, but maybe like for yourself as a writer, like what would your ideal scenario be in a few years' time, or whenever it might be, in terms of your own self, I guess?
My own self. I mean, I don't know, maybe world domination for me at least.
at least, yeah.
But more seriously, I feel that I hope that Pakistan becomes a more tolerant country. That's what I've really, especially when it comes to the family system. I think more tolerance, more acceptance, that's what we need. And also that, as you say about the colonialism, yes, we're still suffering from the effects of colonialism, but I do think that Pakistanis need to wake up a little as well, and they need to sort of think outside of the box for starters. And that's why literature hasn't really taken off in Pakistan that much, because people just don't think outside of the box at all, and they don't support their authors, they don't support the arts, and that's why we're so behind Bollywood. In India, people do support authors. They're starting to, and we all know how successful Bollywood is. So Pakistan, I don't know what's holding Pakistan back. I mean, we do have talent, we have plenty of it, but it's just that we don't have that starting that initial boost that we need to really make it. So I don't think we can always keep on blaming the West for all our problems. I do think that it's about time that we also, I mean, we support all these other things a lot, brands and this and that. So why not the arts? So I think that would be my ideal scenario, to see a launch like this in Pakistan, where people actually come in for the book, not for the food or whatever,
yes,
but actually for the book.
Yeah. Not for samosa and things, I guess. But actually, that's really interesting. So, are you saying, for example, you haven't had like a book launch in Pakistan? Is that not like a common thing there? Like, it's not.
I haven't had it yet, but I mean, if I do ever have a book launch in Pakistan, it will mostly be about the optics of it.
Okay.
It'll be about family and photos and this and that. It won't ever be about the book. That's the thing. And a lot of people that I sometimes a lot of people I know in Pakistan who are literary, they were saying that we wish to see something like this in Pakistan, but we can only hope, because something like this won't ever be in Pakistan. It's mostly, when people do get together, it's about other stuff.
Yes.
So literature takes it does not take precedence anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, see, now I didn't really maybe know, that, and I guess it's making me think. What do you think is the difference then between something like watching a film? Because obviously we know the kind of all the hype around the movie The Legend of Mullah Jat, and obviously I don't know how many crore it, which was like great, it's, fantastic. And I mean, I had an interesting experience going to watch it here in the cinema, because even I thought, wow, there's so much hype, I'm going to go see a Pakistani movie. And but yeah, so what is that difference then in terms of books and reading compared to kind of that visual kind of film, and what is it?
I think even the films in Pakistan, I mean, Maula Jat is kind of an anomaly because it did so well, but even the films in Pakistan don't actually do that well because obviously there's not that, the budget isn't really there.
Yeah.
Maula Jat had that money behind it, which is why it became successful, because they were able to invest that money. But usually filmmakers in Pakistan don't have the money at all. I mean, we shouldn't even talk about books and literature because it's like literally if films aren't doing well, then you can imagine what the state of the publishing industry is in Pakistan. That's what I mean, that we are now, I think the latest census, it's about 240 million now, 240 million people. And can you imagine that Pakistan does not have a publishing industry? It is just, it beggars belief, honestly, that a country of such size, of so many people, does not have a public. I mean, Ireland, New Zealand, they're a country of 5 million at most. They have the big five there. Big five have offices there. Not a single big five has an office in Pakistan. They have offices in India, but then we have a trade ban with India. So that becomes even worse.
Yes.
So Pakistan is literally, there's this saying about having the best of both worlds. Pakistan is the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And then do you think like almost, so for example, obviously I host the book club show. I run, an actual kind of women's book club in Luton. There's a book club homeschooling, but so there's a lot, pockets and really amazing things already happening even within our town. So even though there's such a big emphasis on kind of reading for pleasure, is it almost that maybe in Pakistan, because of the economic issues and the kind of issues that people are having day to day, is reading almost like a privileged pastime? Like, is it something, or is it just, I guess I'm interested to know your perspective on why maybe reading isn't a thing, or when it comes to an interest.
You see,
I don't know.
That's the interesting thing, because books aren't that expensive in Pakistan. I mean, people seem to have a lot of money for coffees and stuff. So I mean, if you look at the coffee culture in Pakistan, and coffees are over 1,000 rupees now in Pakistan, but people seem to have plenty for that. But when it comes to books, they're like, no, too expensive. We'll just buy the pirated copy. That's the thing. I think it's the mindset that needs to change, and I think that's where the UK really works, because in the UK, people think about a book like an entertainment for the next 2-3 days. They don't think about it like I'm spending £10 or £15 on a book that I won't enjoy. They're like, okay, this is entertainment. This actually beats a coffee. So, I mean, not everyone in the UK, but most people, which is why the publishing industry here is so successful. Whereas in Pakistan, we think the opposite. We're like, oh, waste 1,000 on a book? No. I'm going to waste this. Actually, I'm going to get a coffee with a friend, and I'm going to go to Urdu Bazaar and buy this for 200 rupees. Because why should I buy Awais Khan's book for 1,000 or 1,500 rupees? I can buy Stephen King or whatever for 1,500, but Awais deserves 200 rupees.
Yeah.
It's that.
No,
Maybe it's that colonial hangover then.
Yeah,
because
because
they don't want to pay that much for a Pakistani author.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's just because I'm just thinking, because you're right, because in for us it's like a social thing. You can read a book and then still meet over coffee. You can still pay for the coffee and and have a chat, and I guess there's always the option. I mean, I love having actual kind of physical copies because I just like the feel of it. But obviously, we've got options of even ebooks. So there's so much, I guess, out there. And obviously, I mean, again, obviously maybe not in Pakistan, but libraries are a wonderful resource. And then being able to kind of borrow a book from a library is always a perfect way as well, especially if people are maybe struggling to get into reading, or and so you like your genre. It comes. What does it come under? Is it kind of crime, thriller? Like, I'm just thinking how you would describe
my
it.
publisher has described it as literary fiction, but because my books have elements of crime in it, because they deal with those socio-cultural issues. So you could class it under that as well, but generally I would say literary / crime maybe.
Okay. Yeah, it's just good to know, because I think this is the thing with reading as well, because sometimes people are not quite sure what type of book they like. And what were your reading habits like when you were younger? What kind of books did you enjoy?
I remember growing up in Lahore.
Yes.
We had this one big bookshop in Gulberg where I used to live. It was called Book Gallery at the time. I literally read everything. I started off with Enid Blyton at the time, but then I ventured into Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, Secret Seven, and then even, I would secretly read Sweet Valley as well if I could get my hands on it, because I was literally buying every book they had in stock. So after a point, I'd bought everything. I'd read everything. So then my cousin had a very good Sweet Valley collection. So when no one was looking at, pull out a book and read Sweet Valley as well.
Just to read those.
But then Harry Potter came. So
so you're Harry Potter fan as well.
Oh yeah,
okay.
I mean,
of course.
Who isn't?
No. It's true. Yeah. I mean, my daughter loves all things Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So no, definitely. So then, where are you kind of at the moment? So obviously, the book has just been launched, so it's obviously still quite, fairly new. And how does it work? Do you do a book launch and then go straight into thinking about the next book, or do you have a bit of time and space just to enjoy kind of this moment?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends, honestly. I feel that now that I'm 3 books in, I constantly have ideas for books. So I'm actually in the middle of writing something. But yeah, it varies from person to person. Some writers like to take a very long break and, you don't see another book from them for the next 10, 15 years. But I do think that it's very important, especially for Pakistani authors, to actually stay in the, sort of that people should remember them. So one book every 2 years, or even one book a year is, I think, doable.
Yeah, and it must be really good because obviously, like you said, maybe for an audience, it's really nice to see kind of that, I guess, consistency. But also, I assume does it help your kind of momentum keep going? Like you said, like you probably have lots of ideas, and and what is your writing process like? Do you go straight into writing? Do you go on walks, or I'm interested to know what that's like.
It's actually really funny, but I do sort of inspiration hits me when I'm actually in the UK. I feel very inspired. Maybe it's the fact that I'm here and away from all the worries of Pakistan. But yes, I do feel very inspired, and I write a lot when I'm in London. Funnily enough, I love writing in noise. So if I'm in a cafe or somewhere, I actually am able to concentrate a lot, because that noise sort of calms my mind a little and helps me focus. So I do love writing, and cafes in London, I mean, there's nothing quite like it. It's so amazing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's really interesting. Yeah, because I don't know why I always picture writers wanting like absolute quiet, but
I don't know. Maybe I'm in an anomaly, because a lot of writers do want silence when they're writing.
Yeah. But no, I guess it's just whatever. Yeah, I guess helps to kind of get that brain kind of in gear, which is great. And so how has your time in the UK, I know we've spoken about your book launch, but how do you find the UK compared to Pakistan? Like, what is it in particular about? Actually, so let me kind of put that. What is your favourite thing about Pakistan? What's your favourite thing about the UK?
My favourite thing about Pakistan is family, because I have family there, and I that's the best part of Pakistan. I think the family dynamics and the support you get from family all the time, and the concern and everything. I think that's what I love about Pakistan. UK, it's very liberating for me. I think it's being free in the UK. It's be able to do whatever you want and not having to worry about anything. So I think UK has assumed that status for me, and I really do enjoy my time, and I treat it as a very rare treat. It's getting rarer still, because things are getting so expensive now. So it's a very, very rare treat for me now.
No, but it's good. I mean, it's nice that the fact that you can kind of treat UK almost, I guess, like a second home, which is really lovely. So then, what are you kind of hoping in terms of what you other things that you still want to tackle in terms of, things that you've looked at? So, your first book, again, obviously it was talking about, issues in Pakistan. Second book was about honour killings. This obviously in particular about kind of, the violence of acid attacks, which is obviously quite a gender-based violence. It's majority, obviously, victims tend to be women. So, I mean, what else is there, do you think, that you might still want to explore within your writing?
Well, there's plenty more, I think. There's so much going on in Pakistan. It's not just about the social issues, but what happens inside the family. You see, a lot of that. I would love to explore the inner dynamics of family life in Pakistan, especially marriages. So that's something I want to explore because in Pakistan, you're just expected to get married and get on with it. So I just want to explore that, what actually goes on in the minds of those people who have been thrown together, virtual strangers. So that is something I would like to explore as well.
Yeah, and I think, again, because obviously this book itself, you are looking obviously at arranged marriage, but obviously this isn't... I mean, obviously it is arranged, but also there's so much huge pressure. It's almost... it's coercion. I mean, Aisha's main character, because of her family's needs and how she's, feeling quite guilty, she obviously agrees to this marriage with Raza, despite the fact that she's in love with somebody else. But I think if we talk about what maybe a true arranged marriage is, obviously it doesn't really involve coercion. It's usually a mutual decision, by both parties. But no, I think you're right. I think there's still, though, that thing of you don't really maybe know that each other quite well if you've done it properly in the halal way, compared to what, we term as love marriages. But no, I mean, I think that would be something, really interesting to kind of delve into. So we're approaching kind of the end of the show, but just to kind of finally, if there's any people listening who are interested in writing, or maybe they just want to get into reading or something, what kind of advice can you give them to get into that kind of headspace?
Well, if you're looking to get into writing, I would say that you must have a very thick skin, because you are going to get very discouraged. There will be plenty of rejections, and then when you finally make it, then there will be plenty of one-star reviews as well to contend with. So you have to have a very thick skin, because that's the end. At the end of the day, that's what it's a reader's prerogative, and people will love your book. Some people will not love it that much, and that's okay. So you have to understand that people will have opinions, and that's fine. And if you want to get into reading, then, just don't even wait another second and just head over to your nearest bookshop and buy my book for starters, and, get started from there. But more seriously, I think any genre that fascinates you, anything that fascinates you on TV, for example, if you like watching crime shows or something, then, maybe read crime fiction. And if you like watching Bollywood movies or something, then maybe get commercial fiction. So just get started from there.
Fantastic. No, that's wonderful advice. Yes, and definitely I echo the fact that you should go and grab yourselves a copy of Someone Like Her by Awais Khan, and you will definitely, it's something really, really to think about and contemplate, and especially if you are, from the diaspora as well, there's a bit of a connection there which you can kind of, reflect deeply about. So thank you so much, Awais, for joining me in the studio today on the Book Club Show. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I wish you the luck, best of luck with all of your future work. And listeners, I'll be back hopefully soon, inshallah, with a new book and a new author. So we'll see you very soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.